I just bought the Panasonic GH6. And after using for a few days, here is some of my first impressions. Now, before we jump right into what I think about the actual camera, here is just a little bit about me and my history with Panasonic cameras. So my name is Matthew Dangyou. I'm a cinematographer and DP here locally in North County, San Diego. And I've been shooting on Panasonic cameras basically since I've started filmmaking. So back in 2016, I was originally shooting on the G7 and I've been using that camera for about 4-ish years, and then I finally upgraded to the G9. Now, if you've seen any of my channel or any of my videos, you know I'm a huge, big fanboy of Micro Four Thirds cameras from the G9, GH5, and now purchasing this one, the GH6. So kind of the reason I purchased it, A, is because I've been looking at it for quite some time, and then B, I saw that there was a Black Friday deal going on. This camera for about $400, $500 off. I was like, well, why not spend that and be able to buy another cinema lens from Mikey for 50 mil? So that is what I ended up doing. Now, been using it for the past couple days from filming this video, and I absolutely love it. A couple of the things that I love the most is just all the jam-packed features in this camera, from open gate in 5.8K 30 24 frames, 4.4K open gate in 60 frames a second. The 5.7K quality and formats is absolutely stunning. I love all the amount of recording qualities. The fact you can shoot Apple ProRes has me over the moon. Now, okay, that's a lot of cool specs and recording quality. Now let's actually talk about some things that I love that isn't just about the different recording qualities. One thing is I absolutely love having finally a front end record button. I was debating to get one of the top handles that have a record button because it's really annoying when I'm holding a camera and I want to press record. I either have to go around to press record or switch off the top handle, press record, and then switch off because I have my follow focus on this side, which is just an annoying hassle. Now that I can just go and it's done, the fact that I can just record so much easier, that front record button is absolutely huge for me. I absolutely love it. And all the different pro features from histogram, frame marker, zebra, waveform, and vector is absolutely crazy that out of this $2,000 camera body, you're getting a basically cinema level quality. Now, kind of taking the elephant out of the room, I don't necessarily think this camera has great autofocus. In this last video talking about some Black Friday deals that I made last week, I don't know if any of them are still going on, I did that entire video in autofocus just to test it out. I personally don't use autofocus. I'm probably about 80-70% of the time on cinema lenses anyway, so me using autofocus isn't the hugest deal in the world. And all the shots that I have been using autofocus, about 90% of them, 85-90% of them is usable shots, so it's not a huge worry for me about the autofocus. Now, before I talk about why I ended up upgrading to the Panasonic GH6, a couple of things I want to talk about now is a couple things I'm worried about going forward in the future. So the first thing and the main thing is storage and media. So I shoot on the SanDisk Extreme 150 megabytes. I'm just worried that I'm gonna have to get pro grade SD cards. I don't really want to get CFB Express cards. I did purchase a SSD mount. I'm not a fan of how I'm trying to mount the SSD to the camera. I found some way that is kind of works, but kind of doesn't. So I don't necessarily want to record on SSD right now, because right now I'm not shooting on the higher end megabits. On the recording, I'm not shooting that 400, 600, or 800 megabits per second. I'm shooting 300 and 200 and 150 megabits right now because I don't need to blow up my SSD drives and my hard drives. I don't need to be filling them up crazy fast right now. So I'm shooting on lower megabits right now. So I'm really hoping this card for long term doesn't have any writing issues or it's too slow to write. So if anyone knows if this card right here is good enough to record most formats on the GH6, please just let me know in the comments below. I'm actually super curious. Besides that, there's not many other worries. I absolutely love this camera. Now let's talk about a couple of the reasons why I upgrade and absolutely love the GH6. The first part is the firmware updates. Like I just mentioned, firmware updates are absolutely huge for Panasonic cameras, and like the G9, it gets better over time. So it's kind of nice if you buy a Panasonic camera, say like you bought the G9, it ended up getting 4K 30 frames 10-bit, 4K 60 frames 8-bit. You bought the GH5, you're getting more firmware, more features in it, so the camera gets better over time. And that's kind of where I'm hoping this will start coming into play later in a couple of years of owning this camera. So it ends up being like a brand new camera, which if you own a Sony camera, you get the Sony a7S III right now, and then maybe in like 5 years you're gonna get the Sony a7 VI, and the Sony a7 VII is gonna come, and just constantly other camera brands are pushing out more and more and more and more cameras. So I really like that Panasonic tries to make a really great camera and then just update it, so people don't feel like, oh, new camera came out, so now I have to buy this camera to sell this camera and have this huge headache. So being able to just have one camera and have firmware updates, continuing to update it over time, is absolutely huge. Now, the second reason I upgraded is that open gate format. So I ended up creating this past few months, year, brand new video production company that I'm officially starting in 2023 called 4x3 Films, where we're gonna specialize in helping businesses make vertical and horizontal content at the same time, or making content that can be utilized on multiple platforms without wasting their time or money. How? Open gate format, or 4x3 filming, which is kind of the essential hack with this camera, and is a huge reason I bought it. Being able to shoot that 5.8K 30 and 24 frames a second in 4x3, and that 4.4K 60 frames a second in 4x3 is absolutely huge. So the last reason I bought this camera, similar to the firmware updates, is that it allows me to kind of have some room to grow into it. It's kind of like buying a shoe for a kid. You don't buy a shoe that is a perfect fit, you buy a shoe that's maybe 1 or 2 sizes bigger, so they have room to grow into it. And that's where this camera kind of falls in place. It's definitely a cinema camera with the amount of features, specs, and different things that you can actually physically do with it. What I love absolutely about it though is there's room for me to grow into it. Anyways guys, those are my first impressions on the Panasonic GH6. If you have any other questions before I end this video about the GH6, I plan on making a bunch of other videos about the GH6. Autofocus, low light, slow motion, my customized buttons. I plan on making a bunch of content around the GH6 and building sort of my channel, talking about it, talking about what amazing cinema camera this is and what you can do with it, and take you guys behind the scenes on a couple of commercials I shoot using this camera. So definitely consider subscribing if you're interested in that, and leave those questions in the comments below on what you have and what you're thinking, or what you want to know about the GH6. Anyway guys, until next week, peace.